Emma's paycheck hit on Friday morning. By lunch, the screen already looked responsible. Deposit at the top, rent below it, credit card minimum below that, phone, insurance, groceries, nothing dramatic, no wild shopping spree, no red warning banner, just a normal account doing normal adult things. And that was the dangerous part. Because when one new bill notification landed before the next payday, Emma was suddenly not deciding what something cost. She was deciding how fast she needed relief. If she was paying her bills and not doing anything reckless, why did the bank still keep winning? What Emma believed was the same thing a lot of reasonable people believe. If the paycheck comes in, the essentials clear, and you are not obviously overspending, you are basically okay. Maybe not thriving, maybe not relaxed, but okay enough. Safe enough. The app itself seems to confirm that story. It shows movement, it shows bills paid, it shows survival. And survival looks a lot like stability when you're checking your phone between work, errands, and trying to keep the week moving. So on paycheck day, Emma felt relief, not danger. That matters, because the weak choice in this story does not feel weak. It feels adult. It feels disciplined. She is not trying to game the system. She is trying to keep transportation working, keep food in the kitchen, keep the month from turning into a public mess. The short-term benefit is real. The month keeps moving. Nothing bounces. Nothing gets shut off. Nobody looking over her shoulder would say she is making crazy decisions. Then the calendar does what the bank app does not. It tells the truth about timing. A bill lands before the next payday. Not a fantasy problem. Not some giant lifestyle blow-up. Just one ordinary mismatch. A due date arrives at the wrong moment. Or a repair cannot wait. Or an invoice shows up in the same stretch where most of the paycheck is already assigned. That is the trap. Emma is not confessing to overspending. She is staring at sequence. This bill is due now. The money arrives later. Between those two dates sits the entire business model. On the screen, the scoreboard changes. A few hours earlier, the account said, functioning. Now the calendar says, exposed. Emma's first move is completely understandable. She bridges it. Maybe she lets the account run a little too close and risks the overdraft. Maybe she swipes the credit card because the immediate goal is not optimization. It is to get to next Friday without rent trouble, a dead car, or a bounced payment. That choice feels smart in the moment because it solves the visible problem. The repair gets approved, the bill gets paid, the week survives. If you freeze the story there, Emma looks like she handled it. And that is why this trap lasts so long. The first scoreboard says she was right. She bought a few safe days. That is what she thinks she purchased. A little time, a little protection, a way to stop one problem from becoming 3 problems. And honestly, that part is true. Credit and overdraft are sold as bridges, because sometimes they really do bridge something. The mistake is not that Emma used a bridge. The mistake is believing the bridge ended at the other side of this week. The first statement arrives, or the first alert. That is where the story turns. Now the same bank app that looked calm has a new passenger in it. A fee, or a carried balance. Or just less breathing room than last month before anything new has even happened. Emma does not need a giant spreadsheet to feel that. She feels it in the next grocery trip. She feels it at the gas station. She feels it when another ordinary bill posts and the app no longer looks like a map of the month. It looks like a list of things trying to get to her first. That is the hidden mechanism. The bridge did not just solve a timing problem. It sold next month a little earlier than Emma realized. So month 3 does not begin clean. It begins with residue. Last month's emergency is still taking up space in this month's decisions. Not because the original bill is still sitting on the counter, but because the cost of solving it followed her forward. The new paycheck arrives, and part of its job is already to clean up the last rescue, which means the next mismatch gets easier to trigger. Watch what changes in real life when that happens. Emma starts checking the app more often, not because she has become irresponsible, but because timing is now the real boss. She mentally sorts purchases by posting date. She hopes one bill clears after another deposit. She becomes careful in a very tiring way. This is not luxury spending. This is sequence management. A lot of adults think they have a money problem when what they really have is a clock problem. And clocks are expensive when you do not have room to wait. A few months later, the second layer shows up. Emma needs something fixed, replaced, renewed, or handled quickly. Here's where the cost stops looking like a fee problem and starts looking like a life problem. Because people with buffer do not just have money, they have time, they can wait until payday, they can get another quote, they can ask if the charge can hit next week, they can leave and come back. Emma cannot, so the repair does not become expensive because the repair changed. It becomes expensive because Emma has to solve it by Friday. That desperation premium is easy to miss if you only look for obvious charges. Sometimes the bank does not take the next dollar directly. Sometimes the bank helps create the conditions where Emma has to say yes faster, compare less, and accept worse timing. The account balance is not only deciding what she can buy, it is deciding whether she can pause. That is why this story is bigger than overdraft. Overdraft is just the cleanest visible version. A transaction lands, the account is short, and the bank charges for the timing mismatch. A single overdraft transaction can be around $35. The number matters, but the life consequence matters more. One awkward timing gap can make the next grocery run feel suspicious. One fee can turn the phone screen into something Emma checks with dread instead of information. And Emma is not unusual here. One of the most useful numbers in personal finance is not about investing or inflation. It is this. Bankrate found that just 47% of Americans indicate they have sufficient liquidity or access to funds to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. That matters because it reframes the whole scene. Emma is not some edge case making bizarre choices. A normal emergency is enough to push many households toward borrowing, fees, delayed payments, or some other bridge. So when she reaches for the card or cuts the account too close, she is not stepping outside the system. She is behaving exactly where the system expects millions of people to behave. Then the revenue reveal makes the contradiction harder to ignore. Banks collected $5.83 billion in overdraft and NSF fee revenue in 2023. That is not tiny noise at the edge of the business. That is a real money stream built from moments that look a lot like Emma's phone screen. Deposit in, bills out, one due date mismatch, one low buffer decision, one small panic, bought with future breathing room. The scoreboard turns right there. At first, Emma's account seemed to prove she was stable because she kept getting through the month. Now it proves something else. It proves she has just enough money to function, but not enough money to wait. And that difference is where the bank gets paid, not when everything is on fire, when everything looks almost controlled. By month 6, the pattern begins changing, Emma, before the next emergency even arrives. This is the part people miss because there may not be a visible crisis on screen. She starts making smaller, defensive choices early. She says no to things that would actually help because she needs the cash to remain movable. She leaves less room for joy, but still doesn't feel secure. She may put off a routine fix because this week is too tight, then get hit later when it is no longer optional. She may keep only the minimum going on the card because the current month needs air. Again, not reckless. Rational under pressure. But pressure has a direction. It keeps borrowing room from the future. So by month 12, the consequence is bigger than money leaving the account. Emma loses choice, that sounds abstract, until you put it back on the screen. She cannot look at a repair quote and calmly wait a day. She cannot see a new bill and think, fine, I'll move money over. She cannot treat a minor surprise like an inconvenience. Everything arrives with extra emotional force because every surprise has to pass through the same narrow doorway. Can this make it to next payday without becoming a fee, a balance, or a bigger problem? That is why the app controls her timing. It is not commanding her. It is shrinking her options until the most available choice is also the one that pays someone else. Now, a fair objection. Some households are not one smart trick away from solving this. Income is tight. Prices are real. Bad timing is real. Telling Emma to just budget harder can sound insulting because she already knows what every bill is. She is not confused. She is short on waiting room, and building that waiting room can take time, especially if every month already feels spoken for. That objection is correct. This story is not, if you were more disciplined, banks couldn't touch you. That would be smug and false. The point is simpler. The system gets paid when you have no room to wait, so the measurement of safety has to change. Do not ask whether this paycheck survives. Ask whether one normal problem forces a fee, a balance, or a rushed yes. That is the operating rule. And it leads to a practical reset that is much less glamorous than most financial advice. Emma does not need a perfect budget aesthetic. She needs a boring buffer. A separate account, labeled something plain. Buffer, car repair, breathing room. Not an account meant to impress her. An account meant to slow down the next emergency so it does not instantly become a bank product event. In the reset version of the story, the screen looks almost boring. Paycheck lands. A small automatic transfer leaves right after payday, before the month gets loud. Not huge, not heroic, just consistent. The buffer account stays slightly inconvenient on purpose, not impossible to reach. Just not blended into checking where it can disappear into lunch, subscriptions, and accidental optimism. Then the same type of surprise lands again later. Maybe not identical, but ordinary. A real life interruption. And this time the scoreboard changes in the only way that matters. Emma does not need the bank's bridge. She makes a transfer. The problem is still annoying. The bill is still unwelcome, but it is a timing inconvenience, not a fee opportunity. That is when control actually starts, not when the paycheck lands. That part can still happen while the system is quietly charging rent inside your stress. Control starts when one normal problem no longer hijacks the calendar. Emma looked fine at the beginning because the deposit hit and the essentials cleared. But looking fine is not the same as being free. Banks make money from your stress when your money has no waiting room. So the next time the app says you survived the month, ask one better question. If a normal bill showed up tonight, would I need permission from debt or fees to handle it? If the answer is yes, start the boring buffer anyway, because the day that account exists, the app stops deciding every urgent move.